Five, four, three, generation two, one.
In my career as a judge, I saw that those who should be enforcing the law often broke it, and those who write the laws often do so without regard to the Constitution they are sworn to uphold. My next guest is cut from a different cloth. Sheriff Richard Mack of Arizona travels the country, speaking to law enforcement officials and others about their duty to protect individual liberty and to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. For his participation in the Oath Keepers movement, he's been labeled a dangerous militia person and targeted by groups for his lack of fidelity. I'm horrified, and so should everyone else be, by things like we showed, which you're looking at now. Footage on Freedom Watch of a Columbia, Missouri SWAT raid on a family home. This turned up no drugs. It invaded a private home. It terrified an innocent family. It scandalized young children, and they killed the family dog. Sheriff Mack, welcome back to Freedom Watch. This SWAT team, this SWAT raid in Columbia, Missouri, which has gone viral on the internet, is this typical of what happens when SWAT teams get carried away looking for drugs in private homes?
Well, I'm afraid it's happened in America far too often, Judge. I used to be on some of these raids. I used to be an undercover narcotics officer. I've seen these happen. Thankfully, there are some good cops out there and chiefs of police and sheriffs who try to prevent these sort of things. But I'll tell you the bottom line. The police were far more criminal in this situation than the person they were raiding. There's a lot of questions about this that need to be answered, but none of them look good. And none of the potential answers look good for the police in this situation.
Well, the police got a search warrant to do this on the basis of an anonymous tip. Now, you know the law. You can't get a search warrant on the basis of an anonymous tip. You have to have other information. And they got the search warrant 8 days before they executed it. What could they have been doing in those 8 days to see if any drugs were going in and out of the house that was a lot less violent than this raid?
Well, you have to set up surveillance, and you have to verify the anonymous tip, even if it was a reliable informant that gave them the information. Even if it was a snitch for the police, you still have to verify the information. You can't just take people's word for it like that. And an anonymous tip, absolutely not. And you can't serve the warrant 8 days later without verifying other information.
Of course
you
not.
can't do it.
In fact, most warrants,
no way.
You and I are familiar with warrants because you applied for them and I granted them, though unhappily in 2 different states. It would have been nice to have worked with you.
Yes.
I've never seen a warrant that was open-ended. They always have a time period during which it must be served because the evidence on which the warrant is based can change. And you're not supposed to serve the warrant if the basis for it has changed with the passage of time.
That's the reason the 8 days is absolutely a horrible mistake by the police. They have to know you can't do it. They could have had other people in there. They could have rented the place out. They could have been gone and had relatives staying in there. You can't just rush in 8 days later and start shooting dogs and terrorizing little children. And these police, I think, seriously, Judge, I think some of these people are going to end up going to jail or being convicted of crimes themselves.
Well, they certainly
this thing
should.
Is way out of line.
We had the mayor on the show. Now, he was not the mayor when this happened.
Correct.
And he argues that he is as much in opposition to this as you and I and the folks watching us now are in opposition to it. But when I said to him, when are these cops going to be arrested, he didn't want to answer. And I asked him the question a second time, and he still didn't want to answer. There clearly are federal civil rights violations. This clearly warrants at least an inquiry by a grand jury to see if indictments are merited. But taking a step back and just looking at the big picture, what has happened in law enforcement in America that we seem to be seeing the militarization of it to the point where even members of the military are offended when law enforcement is compared to their behavior?
Well, again, none of that should be sitting well with the people of America. And it's kind of the boys with toys thing. If you give toys to these police boys, they're going to use them. Just like the incidents we've seen across America with tasers. Everybody wants their own SWAT team. So to justify the expense of getting a SWAT team, SWAT van, SWAT equipment, assault rifles, they have to use them. And so they go use them on mundane raids like this. This shouldn't even been a raid. That man should not have even been arrested. At the time, if they found a pipe with marijuana residue, that's a cite and release.
Right.
At best.
Right, because it's not for distribution. It's such a small amount, and it's the residue. It's not there that something that can be used again.
And in most places, that's not even like a traffic violation. And Missouri has, or that area has, a law about that that you can possess a small amount without going to jail.
When I was in law school and when you were in the police academy, the rule of thumb was that the police couldn't use deadly force unless it was necessary to repel deadly force against them. This looked like a military raid with deadly force. A taser is a deadly weapon. An M16 is a deadly weapon. A shotgun is a deadly weapon. How can they justify using this stuff on a homeowner and his 3 children and his dog?
They really can't, and that's why I think this is going to really blow up in their faces. Whoever okayed this raid and whoever the supervisor was at the scene, he's in trouble. And I mean, he's in really bad trouble. And this was blown from a supervisory standpoint, from a police standpoint, and from a law standpoint. These guys are in trouble.
When you go around the country speaking to police officials who have taken an oath always to uphold the Constitution, do you expect that if they were instructed to do something like we just watched, like happened in Columbia, Missouri, that they would refuse to do so?
I would hope so, Judge. Yes, absolutely. We're not a bunch of Nuremberg defenders here. We should know that following stupid orders and unlawful, unconstitutional orders is something we don't have to do and we shouldn't do. And we should be standing against any supervisor who tells us to go on such a raid. And these officers should have stood down and take a deep breath and say, you know what we're doing here is wrong. 8 days on an anonymous tip. Any first-grade law school student or any first-grade police academy student should have known this was wrong from the get-go.
I have called upon federal officials in Missouri, and I have called upon state and local officials in Missouri to arrest everyone who participated in this raid. And I am waiting, as are you, as are people who believe in the Constitution and human freedom, for that to happen. I suspect it will. I suspect they're taking their time, but I'm waiting for it to happen. Sheriff Mack, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Judge. I appreciate being with you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. You can catch today's show on foxnews.com/freedomwatch and on Sirius 145, XM 168, or online at foxnewstalk.com at 6 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays. From New York, defending freedom. Until the next time, stay free, America.